Well, here we go. Welcome back to ABT Lockdown Live. This is a segment that we're going to call On the Water Champions. And the idea of this segment is to interview some previous anglers of the year, some event winners, some grand final winners, really get to do some in-depth interviews with guys that have really kicked some goals in previous years. And in the spirit of keeping things a little bit close to home in this first episode, remember, this is our first ABT Lockdown Live. We want comments down below. We want to know what you want. We've got Joey Urquhart involved, and Joey Urquhart, of course, hero to all of the Bass Electric fishermen. He is the man who took the Bass Electric series and took it from something that was on the bit of the back burner, and he turned it into the Casino Outdoors Bass Electric series and made it such a great series that you all enjoy and love. But as karma works, last year Joey also won the Bass Electric Angler of the Year award, and that's the best 3 events for the year. And Joey, you absolutely nailed it in with a first, a second, and a second, and we are going to talk about some of those things today, mate. Welcome to the ABT Lockdown Live.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's good to be on. Better than sitting in the shed making lures, that's for sure.
Well, look, we all love it as a bit of a distraction, and we all know that until comps are allowed, morally correct to do and responsible for us to do, we're going to be, talking about the old times and looking forward to the times we're getting back on the water. So we're going to look back to last year at the Angler of the Year. Was this the first time you've won a Bass Electric Angler of the Year, Joey?
Yeah, it was, Steve. I'd never really, it's not something I ever pursued. Like, if it happens, it happens. And coming into last year, it was the only thing in my repertoire that I didn't have. So I really, really wanted to work hard and have a proper crack at it. And after the first 2 rounds, a fourth and a first, I thought, what, this could be the year. This could happen. So yeah, it was pretty unreal to take it out, especially the last round being on the home water. It was pretty special.
Well, let's rewind a little bit and give us a little bit about your background. Like, we know you make Jollop lures. We know you work at Casino Outdoors. We know that you represent Valley Hill and have something to do with Tackle Lane. Just tell us, Joe, about Joey Urquhart's life and what ended up putting you in that Bass Electric seat.
So basically, where I'm sitting right here, I grew up about 50 metres across the road where my mum lives. I've sort of grown up here, fished the river my whole life basically with mum and dad. So that was predominantly what I did. And then I think 12 years ago, I fished my first. It was up Burry Hall Dam. And back in those days, I think there might have been like 78 anglers to that event. It was a huge 3 metre that we had to put upside down on a trailer, and I had like this esky as my live well, and I had a little 27-pound tiller back in those days, and went out and got a 5th place in my first ever electric round, and that was just, that got me hooked. That was back in 2008, and ever since been pursuing the electric series from then on.
So tell us about your other business interest. How did you tell us about the lure making side and the Valley Hill side.
So the Valley Hill and the lure sort of all happened around the same time, about sort of that 4 years ago. Valley Hill, they approached at the Stack Distributions. They approached us and said, would you guys be interested in jumping on board? And it just went from there. It's as well as I do, the Japanese, there's no better people than the Japanese. They're the most polite people. They'll do absolutely anything for you. So they got under their wing and have just looked after us ever since. When you go over there, they treat you like a king, and it's just been phenomenal. Their support's been sensational.
It was actually pretty cool when we were over at the Osaka trade show. Yeah, seeing you guys there in the Valley Hill jerseys, being put up on the pedestal like the great Aussie fishermen who are you and Westy, of course. Flavour of the month over there in Japan, mate. So well done. So let's work through the first place at Hens through to ISIS and the grand final. And while I get you to talk about these events, I want you to hold the lure up to the camera. But the way this Skype works, and we drop lots of frames out in Skype, I want you to hold the lure up sort of and nice and still for the whole time that you're talking about it, mate. So start us off at Hens and let's bring all of these stories together, mate. Tell us about your first place at Hens and how you love and hate that joint.
So, I've got a pretty a bit of hate for Hens. I've won 2 tournaments there now. I hate it because as a tournament director, it's an absolute nightmare. To fish, I love it. So basically, went in there this year, having been the previous winner on this exact bait. So 2 years in a row, this bait took it out there. It's the LB 500 from Valley Hill. So basically, went in this year. It was a bit of a half-assed pre-fish. Sort of drove up early, got there, knew where I wanted to fish. Went over to the area to fair drive around to the eastern arm. I think it's the best part of an hour by electric power. And yeah, fished like I normally would fish, and I didn't really see anything super exciting. So I burnt way out the back of the eastern arm, probably about another 40 minutes, and sort of went, you know what, I haven't found anything. I'll go back and I'll have another crack at what I know works there. And I had a chat to Liam, good mate Liam, come over and we have a chat, and he said, oh man, I've been smashing them. And I'm like, yeah, that's weird. Like, I've fished the sort of same stuff and wasn't doing anything exciting. So he left, and I just stuck to a plan and did what I did. And it's not that I was doing the wrong thing. It's just the fish hadn't bitten there at that time. I think he drove off about 20 minutes, and I just started smacking them. I jumped from point to point. It was a certain little point that had the fish on them. It wasn't just any point. It had to be a point where the creek comes super close to that point, like not a long sloping point. It was a point where at the base of the trees was 20 foot, and then about 10 foot off those trees it dropped into 50, 60 feet. So what I was doing is I was dropping the LV, casting in and free spooling it straight to the base of those trees. As soon as it hit the bottom, I'd slow roll up, and the fish had hit it in that first sort of half a dozen lines. I changed things up for comp day a little bit though. It was very windy on the pre-fish day, and I only had the LV 200 in my box, and I knew I had a stack of 500 in the car, which didn't help me at all on pre-fish. So I could punch it into the wind and it'd drop a lot quicker, and that's what got me the bite. So the next day I didn't have any 200s tied on. I just tied on all the 500s, and yeah, just went to town on them on comp day.
Mate, go through the way you rig it. You guys taught me how to do this at the Wyaralong Valley Hill Bass Open last year, and it's a really cool way to fish them. Like, it makes them four-wheel drivable, and they really hold the fish when you get it, mate. Take us through the modification.
I kind of owe Westy for this one. Having not fished I don't fish a lot of those structure dams. I fish mainly rivers and that, so having trebles on there is not a problem. So what I usually run one off the back as well with the single, but Westy said you don't need to, and he's exactly right. You look at that as a fisherman and you go, you're never going to get a hook up on that. But what the LV does in the water is it doesn't sit like this. The LV almost sits like this. So that hook is out here like this. So the hookup rate's not a problem. They get it every time. But Steve, from Wyaralong, you can pull that through absolutely any country, and it just won't get snagged unless you wedge it into a fork and a limb or something. The hook won't get stuck in, but the hookup rate's sensational.
Yeah, and look, if you do get it stuck wedged into a limb, you can go the other side and pull it off. So you're doing really well fishing this thing on heavyish line to ever lose a bait. And it's really been the first time in a long time I've seen that lipless crankbait take the next step and become a different bait. You know, it's not just like chuck the old jackal and wind it in, which of course works in serious situations. This thing, you can get into some nasty country. So well done for that. Well done for that modification. And Westy probably loved it that you took his modification and hammered him with it.
Yeah, he didn't like that, especially at Hens. He actually on pre-fish day, he won't like me telling you this, but I'll tell you anyway. He rung me and he's like, man, I'm struggling, hey. And I said, man, come over here, do this, throw this, and he still couldn't catch a fish on him. And then the next day, I knew, come into a comp, people always blow it out of proportion, like, oh, you're going to need 5 kilos to win. And like, once you've been doing it for a while, you know that's just not realistically going to ever happen on a comp day. So I knew I had over 3 kilos in the well, and they were a good 3 kilos, like they were healthy fish. And I sort of went over to Westy and he was pumped, he's like, yeah, man, like I've caught him on your technique, like it's so good. And I opened up the lid of the well and he's like, holy donkeys.
Bad luck, Westy. Mate, let's jump to the next event now. It's at the ISIS Balancing Storage, which is also called Lake Gregory, just about 20 k's out of Bundaberg, one of my favourite lakes to fish. It's a really shallow little basin where they pump water into and they pump it out. So as a result, You get very few bass lost over the spillway in this joint. Great topwater lake, great for any technique, and it's nearly like the Maroon Dam of Bundaberg. You can catch them on whatever you like in there. Absolutely no facilities at the lake, and a bit of a shit of a place again to run a tournament because there's no facilities. But run us through your second placing up there at ISIS.
Yeah, so basically, I'd never been there before. Read a lot about it, watched a lot of the old AFCs when yourself was there, MCing for that. Watched a lot of that stuff, but I don't take too much of that on board. It's a small lake. If you can't work that out in a day or a couple of days, there's something wrong, So I sort of didn't really listen too much of that. I was like, it's a small lake. Where I'm going to want to fish, you can't anyway because there's someone else there. So basically, just rigged up what I'd fished the river for pre-fish day. Jerk baits, crankbaits, predominantly surface. So I went surface pretty hard on pre-fish morning. Went out, struggled early, and then I sort of found a different patch of weed and jerk baited them up, and it was easy. I caught probably, a dozen fish off the edge, and it was just easy. They weren't huge, but I'm like, that's bad for tomorrow. That's not a problem. There was one main point in the middle of the lake, and when I say the middle of the lake, you can see it from everywhere in the lake. It's not very and looking back, it's just a fish highway. If you looked at it on Genesis maps, it didn't look anything exciting, but when you think of it like a fish, it was just a prime position. There was a sloping point with about a 3 foot deeper channel running around the outside. And I looked at it and I went, there's got to be fish here. And I actually sat there for a little while and I was retying that because it was the middle of the day. And I looked down and every couple of minutes there was 2 or 3 fish just rolled through. And I went, okay, there's fish moving through. So I didn't actually have any of our Valley Hill raisin spoons at that stage. So I was just throwing a little slow blight there that everyone throws in a 20 gram. Threw it out, and first cast, I got a kilo fish, and that was by far the biggest fish of the day. And I went, oh, wow, okay. So come comp morning, I stuck to my plan. I went to the edge early, jerk baited, and it was just, I was getting very frustrated, busting off Barra trying to eat it. And there was a lot of boats in the area. And it was probably only about 8 o'clock, and I went, you know what? The best fish I caught yesterday were out on that point. I'm just going to commit to that point for the next 6 hours, and I'm just going to sit there and just hammer it. So basically, upon arrival, first cast, put a fish about 900 grams in the well. It was probably about half an hour later, I put another, it was only a rat, probably a 600 gram in the well. And I felt that everyone else was catching that same size fish. I felt that there's a lot of people. There was no one exactly where I was in this little gutter, but there was a lot of people out deep. And I figured that everyone's going to be catching this just run-of-the-mill 600-700 gram fish. So I sat down, I dug through my box, and I actually found a depths flutter spoon. They're very long. They're about 100 mil long, but they're not heavy. They're super light. So I tied that on and I thought, you know what, I've got me 2. I just need a big fish. And very first cast, I ripped it out and I heard someone yelling in the background, Yahoo, they caught a fish. And I turned around, and as I turned around, I felt it come tight and I assumed it was a piece of weed. And I give it 2 big rips. Well, it wasn't a piece of weed at all. It was a 1.4 kilo bass. And it was the kicker for the day. And, to get that in the well pretty early I was pretty confident it was going to have me up there.
Well, it's an interesting tactic, isn't it? Once you've got your limit, there's no use catching 30 more 600 gram fish. No. They don't do you any good at all. So that's the mindset that comes from a lot of tournament fishing, and knowing that, you know what, I'm happy to get 2 more bites for the rest of the day so long as they're the right bites.
Exactly right. Yeah, I'd rather catch 2 more 1.5 kilo bass than catch 30 the same size.
Yeah, different mindset from the social fishing. Now let's move on to the one that sealed it for you, which was the grand final on your home river at the Richmond River, mate. And we all enjoyed watching the highlights of that. A lot of you made that long run down to the place called Swan Bay, which isn't a bay, it's just a bend in the river with a bit of an oxbow hanging in behind it. But when I did my research, I'm looking for a bay. I couldn't see no bay. But look, it was a spot where obviously it's a bit of a community hole. A lot of people know that there were fish there. And at the Bass Pro, I think a few weeks before, there was some good fish caught there as well. So take us through your day at Swan Bay, because it sounded like an absolute fish fest.
Yeah, so leading into the event, I obviously fished that pro event, and it was tough for me. I did struggle in that event, and it's a known fact that time of year you get those concentrations of fish down to Swan Bay, to Woodburn, all schooled up. Unfortunately, that's not my style of fishing, and in that pro event I was probably a little bit pig-headed, if anything, to not adapt. So coming to the electric event, I accepted the fact that, look, if I want to do well, I'm going to have to find these schooled fish. And we put the time and effort in, and they had moved a little bit from the pro event. When I say a little bit, across the river. But we located them there. So basically, pre-fish day, I wasn't overly wrapped in fishing. I had Westy staying here, and I said, look, save us both going out. I'll just take the big boat out with the petrol motor on, and we can go where you want to go and have a look around, and we'll just do that. So, yeah, went out sort of pre-fish day and went up the river to where sort of Westy wanted to go, showed him a few little spots, and it sort of confirmed in my mind that I'm making the right decision making the run, because there was the odd good fish, but it wasn't productive enough for me to want to go up the river. So we come back to about the boat ramp, probably like 10 o'clock. I said, man, if you're happy, we'll just get off the water. And in the back of my mind, there was that little thing saying, but what happens if they're not there? What happens if you go down there tomorrow and they've just disappeared? So I said to him, look, we'll just literally go down, have like 10 casts just to see that they're there. Like, I don't want to sting them. Yeah, literally, we pulled up. I think we had 10 fish and 10 casts. And I said, yeah, like, that's us. That's me done for the weekend. Like, this is where I'm coming, And Westy was sort of a little bit, I wish I had the battery power to come down too. And I said, man, you're more than welcome to come down. But he sort of said, no, you know what? I'm happy with what I found. And as it was, he was leading the tournament after day one anyway. So, yeah, I think coming in, I had a good plan and I just stuck to it.
Yeah, it's awesome, mate. And I know in the background here we've had a little bit of footage playing of, you and the winner, Pete Bostock, fishing sort of next to each other. A few more guys moving in, and at times we had, multiple fish coming in at the one time. I suppose that's what the electric series is all about, guys getting together, sharing info, having a bit of fun. There's no sheep stations involved in the Bass Electrics, and it's great to see that those numbers rising again. Of course, the start of this year's season looks like it's been derailed. And it has been derailed. But, in the back of our minds, maybe at the end of the year we're going to be able to get out and fish a couple of Bass Electric events, mate. Real shame because, the Casino Outdoors Bass Electric Series this year has a pretty good first prize. We've got the little bluefin boat with electric motors and, green energy batteries to go in it. It's a really cool little punt, the first prize.
Yeah, it's a cracker prize. You never know what might happen. We could maybe have a couple of quick rounds at the end of the season, or a winner takes all event. I'm not sure, but yeah, for whoever walks away with that, whether it's this year or next year, it's going to be a cracking little prize. And just touching what you're saying before about groups of mates fishing together, what makes it like the three of us that fish Swan Bay, we sort of all locals, ex-locals. So we all sort of knew that they were there, and we met up on pre-fish night, and we're like, hey, we're all going to go down there. And, it was just the best weekend. Like, it was so chatty. There was not one point where I was like cranky that someone was casting over you or whatever. Like, it was just a cracking weekend, and you got three mates together catching 100+ bass a day. Like, it can't get any better than that.
No, mate. Look, it was a great way to finally bring home that Bass Electric Angler of the Year title. And I think a really nice touch was at the end when your mum interviewed you for it, mate. She stepped in and she did a great job interviewing little Joey about winning his title. So thanks very much for that, Joy. It's you're a real Bassin family. You live in the perchinest part of the world, so it was great to see you finally got that trophy that's sitting on your table there, mate. Right for it, mate. I think you need to give it a bit of a kiss now to show how much you love it.
Nah, mate, it was, you know what, like, to be honest, I love that green energy battery, but if you'd said, hey, there's no prize, like, I wouldn't have cared. As long as I got that trophy, man, that's literally all I wanted out of the year. It's not about the prizes. If it's about the prizes, you're doing it for the wrong reason. So it's all about that trophy on the cabinet.
You betcha. And look, let's face it. If someone else won it, you could just make yourself one. Yeah, you make all the ABT trophies, mate. So, look, a big thanks for that, mate. Thanks for catching up this morning. Thanks for making all those ABT trophies. And on behalf of all the Bass Electric guys, thank you very much for sticking your hand up to run that Bass Electric series, mate. You've really turned it into something very special out of something that wasn't getting the attention it deserved, mate. So from ABT, thank you very much.
No worries, Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you.